I'm really grateful to be able to have a conversation this afternoon with Jim Morris, who is the CEO of Greater Indy Habitat for Humanity, and to really explore the issues around housing in our city and in our region. Jim, thank you for taking the time to chat with me this afternoon. I really appreciate it.
So grateful to have. Appreciate being here.
Well, we at Second have been partners with Habitat for many, many years. You probably know more of that history than I do, but just so grateful to share ministry with you, and so grateful for the work that you all do in this community. So thank you for the partnership, and thank you for your leadership.
Yeah, no, it's equal. Partnership is something we stress, and Second Presbyterian has always been right alongside us in what has been the mission for Habitat for Humanity. And it's an important part of who we are, because we stress in our mission bringing people together.
Yes.
And you, as a congregation, step right into that willingly and have been such a good partner for such a long time.
Oh, thank you for that. And not sure anybody draws folks together better in the city than Habitat, so thank you for that. At Second, we're really exploring how we can make a difference in the lives of our neighbors, really thinking local, really thinking about Washington Township, the city of Indianapolis, the broader region. And one of the areas that we've really focused on and amplified in our mission work, in our partnerships, in our local outreach is housing. And we've really tried to, and are continuing to try to educate ourselves about the need for affordable housing in Indianapolis. And so I would love to just hear more from you about the current need and how we came to this place.
Yeah, no, always love to talk in this space. And housing is such that, we were talking off camera a little bit. I mean, when we talk to many of the individuals and families who are purchasing through us, when we talk about need, it really goes to this desire to be a homeowner. And so sometimes the pride of ownership isn't easy to quantify, but is really part of why they want to purchase a home. And that sense of ownership and hosting a Thanksgiving and hosting a birthday party in their home with family and relatives really oftentimes is what will resonate when asked the question, very similar as to any of us who've been a part of home ownership. And then there are all the elements of why is it a barrier for many to get to that goal. And a lot of it is monetary, right? So for us, income-based is the focus, and that gap is widening in Indianapolis and in the greater Indy area, kind of our 8-county region. We've seen prices going up. Anyone who's paid attention in the housing market, who's read any of the news, has seen that happen, and that's happening at the market level. And so it's been exacerbated for those who are working at income levels that traditionally had a harder time reaching the goal of homeownership. So the math just plays out that the greater growth in price increases, the difficult challenge of then attaining that price when income levels haven't kept pace is where you're seeing the gap widen for those who can attain home ownership.
Yeah. It's interested. I know one of the sort of values and pillars of your program is education. Can you talk a little bit about how you go about the process of educating first-time home owners and buyers?
Yeah, no, we talked about partnership and the willingness to partner. So coming obviously to Habitat to purchase a home through us, most are first-time buyers, pretty much all, but some are first-generation home buyers. And so much of it is we want to see a successful long-term ownership in anyone who comes through us. So we focus a lot on the educating of, hey, you used to be a renter, now you're going to be an owner. What are some of those elements from the basics of no longer can you have somebody else fix the water heater, it's your water heater, to the financial end of budgeting and financing for home ownership and all that go into that. I often say I would have loved to have had that education when I entered my first home,
me too.
because so many of those things were not taught and still are not. So we focus a lot of that in there. So that first 6 months or so of focusing, it's in class. So it's a learning moment to learn all the elements of what it takes to be a homeowner for a long term, whatever the aspirations are of that household. But we want them to feel confident and ready and prepared as they go into closing on the home. So they'll spend that 6 months, and that other partnership side is that they walk alongside partners like Second Presbyterian and the volunteers when they get to build or rehab their own home.
Right. Around the question of access, we hear a lot about inventory and building and the cost of building, but also just the accessibility and availability of housing in the city. Is that a major impediment at this point in terms of not just accessibility of any kind of housing, but affordable housing?
Yeah, I think again, we're seeing, we have the benefit of having peers across many of the United States where other habitats are located. And you've seen this in other markets hit, other cities like Nashville, Austin, big growth cities like Denver. Indianapolis has always been a steady market, 3 to 4% increase in appreciation, and that's good. And then it exploded. It sort of took this huge hit around the pandemic, and these mixtures. So access to that then has become less approachable for most. There are many now who are in the marketplace who may, for example, be able to go and go to a financial institution and get approved for a loan for $110,000. Well, 110,000 homes, those don't exist. If they do, they're extremely substandard and in need of much more of an investment to be able to be whole that buyer doesn't have the affordability to do. So you see an expanse into the space. We will talk in terms of median income and use income levels that are 80% of whatever the median income is and below, and a lot of people aren't familiar with those terms. So it tends to be in that space where, like, a family of four, if they're in that space, if they're single head of household, which is a group that is a growing group of households that have kids and a single parent. If they're in jobs that are paying $50,000 but they have a couple of kids, then they're not able to afford a home at this point. So what used to be that was accessible at $50,000, those jobs may have not changed as much in terms of growth in income, but now the housing is stretched farther away in terms of accessibility.
Right. Yeah, that's helpful. One of the things that we're seeing here is Washington Township, where we're located, so the north side of Indianapolis, has always felt like a bubble, sort of separate from other parts of the city. And I think there's been a perception among some that this area has very little need or very low levels of poverty. And that's historically perhaps been true, but at least in our experience in the mission work that we're doing, in the work of Northside Mission Ministries and our food pantry, in the local school work that we do, poverty is now a reality, not just in certain pockets of the city, but really all over. Are you seeing that in the work that Habitat does as well?
Yeah, I think you're spot on. And I think some of the tendency is that, on the main arteries that we drive, we see homes that are, wonderful homes. They're beautiful homes that for those who can afford those. And it may feel a little hidden, but it's not so much anymore, whether it's in the school systems at Washington Township. You know that in those we work with and talk to in the school systems, there's a strong, growth in that in terms of those who are in need of more, and how do we help build the individuals and families up as well. And so we've seen it. It's regional. It's definitely regional. We're in Marion County, Hendricks, Hamilton, Hancock. It's everywhere that you see. And again, I think it's sometimes there's a perception of those who might be considered, from the terminology, working poor, but it's just the workforce many times that is so greatly needed, whether it's service industry, it could be teachers, it could be, there's a broad breadth of classification of workers who might want to attain home ownership, who now are seeing it just sort of grow away from their ability to get there. So I think some of just that sense of what is it truly, who's actually coming to purchase through us, it is really, most would be surprised. Many in the service injuries, hospitals, other work that's good work, that's needed and necessary work, is now not able to obtain ownership.
Right. I was struck by a similar comment from the folks at Gleaners about food insecurity in Hamilton County. And again, there's sort of a stereotype about Hamilton County that there wouldn't be folks without enough to eat. And yet it's one of the areas of greatest need that they have. I think their largest food bank now is in Hamilton County. And so poverty may look different in different parts of the city, but just because it can be masked doesn't mean it's not a dire need.
Right. Right, and that I think the sense of, looks can be deceiving. And I think that's where some of this is, that that's why some of the impacts with stability, when somebody can be stable with the home, that's where a lot of this starts, that they can't aspire to other things if they're unstable, and now financially being unstable through seeing rents that are increasing at such growth rates because of basic supply and demand. There's just not enough, which means everything's going up.
Yeah. Obviously, for second, and the why for us is Scripture's mandate, right? That we are called to love our neighbors as ourselves. We've been exploring the prophet Jeremiah and this notion of build houses and plant vineyards and put your roots down right where God has planted you, because this is the community where you are called to live and serve, and the neighbors you are called to love and serve. What can a place like Second, driven by this scriptural mandate to love our neighbors, what can we be doing for folks in our city and in our region who don't have access to affordable housing?
Yeah, I think sometimes it's just helping educate, right? We talk about education, but I think educating yourselves, right? I think part of loving, and that's what we oftentimes show, you strip away all that we do. It can be kind of complicated in housing. But it is neighbor loving neighbor. And when you get to walk alongside each other, I think that's what the tangible aspect of our volunteerism is. You may not know how to put on siding, volunteering and learning that day how to put on siding, and then you left being able to actually participate with your neighbor while not necessarily living next door. But I think the call is broader. So I think education is huge, and understanding the breadth of the need is a great start. Obviously, hands and feet are important, and being able to come out and participate, whether it's through Habitat in this space of volunteering, but also just, a lot of the places where you may not, we were talking about where it may not be fully seen, where your children are going to school, where, today, so my son's graduating from North Central. We're Washington Township family, and, what a fantastic school. But understanding the breadth and depth of what those schools are, and participating in those schools, and being able to connect, I think there's those, I love what you're talking about with, right where you are, because I think you think of it as a concentric circle, right? And sometimes it's just within the circle of influence that you have, being able to articulate and understand how to talk about these kinds of things.
Yeah. Your comments before we started about the pride of home ownership and having a place to call your own. The first thing I thought of was teenagers and high schoolers being able to say, "Hey, let's come over to my house." Let's come. And those who lack that basic ability to build community in the space that is theirs to call home, and the difference that it makes when you have a home that is yours. And I know you all walk alongside a family long before and long after the construction of the home. That also feels to me like a really important piece of any work that is done that we would call mission or outreach work, but particularly work around alleviation of poverty. It can't be sort of a one-stop. Here's a house, or here's resources, here's a bag of groceries, but rather really to learn the stories and come alongside. What does that look like, sort of post-construction and kind of in the out years after that?
Yeah, I think we're in our 35th year, when we had done some impact research that really spoke to us. We learned a lot, but the idea that there's a longevity to the home ownership. So they're staying 20 and 30 years. I think sometimes we think in terms of, hey, I'm going to buy my first home and I'm going to get my move up home. It's a little different that we've learned. And so we have many who've paid off their mortgage at this point. So in our 31st year, I think we're up to 170 plus who have now paid off their mortgage. And so they're in a different space. They fully own the home. Many of us would love to be at that space at some point. And at the same time, they've got an asset now, right? And so part of this is wealth building, and hopefully a generational transition can take place in the passing along of wealth. And then truly too, the kind of hidden side of what we do is the mortgaging. And so we originate and we service the mortgage. So we're in relationship. Technically we're the bank, so to speak, but it's about relationship. So we try to keep that, and we have staff in place for that. So, and then we're exploring what does that look like. There might be now, with so many paying off, that we need to have maybe some opportunities for education later. For understanding, we've introduced something called free will, which is an opportunity to create a will. And we talk about this and this idea of passing on assets generationally and having a will. So there are other things to teach that are throughout the life of ownership as well.
Yeah, that's really amazing. Yeah. At serving an institution that's been in the city of Indianapolis for 184 years now, you see the value of staying with and coming alongside, but then not leaving. And obviously, the impact generation to generation that home ownership can have. And we also are talking a lot about really listening to our neighbors, so as opposed to coming with answers. And I think a gift of that relationship over the long term is, you can't love, there's no one you can't love once you've heard their story. And I think there's so much about this for us and for folks who are seeking to do good in the community that begins with really deep listening. What are the roots of some of these generational poverty issues that we have in the city? I think before we can be a part of the solution, we really have to understand the issues and the problem.
I appreciate that a ton, and we try to help. One of my when we connect with the families and those who are purchasing through us is trying to weave the fabric of both our history, where we came from, all the way back in Koinonia Farm, back in Americus, Georgia, and helping them understand they're a part of that full history now, in 70 plus countries, and that we're connected here and internationally, but they're another part of that, that fabric, and that they're, we talk about this for those who can appreciate It's a Wonderful Life. Those who are still, there's scenes that hey, this, your money's not here, it's in your neighbor's house, and that is still how Habitat works. That when they're paying the mortgage, it's going on to help continue in the work of others who are trying to become homeowners. So that's still in that fabric too, which is in there.
Well, as someone who came to Indianapolis from Atlanta and deeply appreciated Habitat's origin story, and actually the week after Easter I quoted Clarence Jordan, the founder of Koinonia Farms, who said, "The greatest testament to the truth of resurrection is not a rolled away stone, but a carried away church." And we really aim to be that church carried away into the community, and just so grateful for the community leadership that you offer personally, but that Greater Indy Habitat offers to so many, and for inviting us to be a part of it for all of these years. Thank you.
Yeah, and thank you to accepting the invitation and for being such a strong partner all these years as well, with both an investment into the families financially and with coming out with the hands and feet of, it's really appreciative.
Grateful to be a part. And thank you for this time today.
Yeah, it's been great. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Really grateful to have a little time with Jim Morris from Greater Indy Habitat for Humanity, and for the challenge that he's given us to think deeply, care deeply, and love deeply in our service to our neighbors.